Hello and welcome to Bill's Chill Fill. Here with our first video episode, and I thought since we're getting into the visual array, I thought it would be a cool idea to actually go ahead and show off, if you will, what exactly I use to get my fill of chill. So, I'm going to walk you through some of my setups, and I think towards the end we'll actually do a little switcheroo of one of my consoles just to give you an idea of how it all works and how I've got it set up. The first setup I have here in front of you is my living room setup. And again, I mean, this isn't really, I said showing off, but it's not like I'm trying to brag about it or anything. The only thing I really have to brag about is the simple fact that I have disposable income to either use wisely or waste, depending on your opinion on all this equipment. So, we'll go ahead and give you a rundown of each of my setups. I'll go over each piece, and at the end, I think I'll just go ahead and switch out one of the consoles that I've been thinking about doing, and then you can kind of see how it's all connected together. All right, so we're starting with the most crucial piece of an audio visual setup, and that is the receiver here. And so I have a Pioneer receiver. In fact, all three receivers that you're going to be seeing today are Pioneer brand. I personally think it's one of the best brands out there. I think most of people in this hobby would agree. Um, this particular receiver was actually my dad's that he purchased back in the 80s, and it still works. Now, not all the features still work on it, but I don't really need all the features that it offers. I mean, it has stuff for like uh, surround sound, which I don't personally use, which that could be a whole other debate for a different episode, but yeah, I don't use surround sound. We humans have two ears, so two speakers is enough for me. I know it sounds cool, but I just don't feel the I don't see the necessity for surround sound. Maybe I need to actually hook it up, and then that will change my mind. But really, what I need the receiver to do is it's called the receiver because it's going to receive the audio signal from all the other components. I've got a CD player, I've got a tape player, I've got a record player, turntable. I have an 8-track player hooked up to this. And then I also have this thing at the bottom here is a reel-to-reel player, and then I also have my TV set up to it, and pretty much all of the audio, all the digital audio in my living room is being sent to this central console here, this central receiver here. And so that is the most important piece. It is your central hub. It's like your brain of the whole setup. And now just working my way from bottom to top of this little tower I've got. This is an Akai reel-to-reel player, and pretty much the way that it works is you'll see that there are two spindles on it. You put a tape on the left, and then you have to wind it up to the right, and then you will have it start spinning up, and then that sends the signal to the receiver, and then you can play music off of that. And in fact, I'll just go ahead and give a short demonstration here. Okay, so I have the reel-to-reel player spinning up here, and I don't want to have copyright issues, so I'm just gonna keep the volume off while I talk while this is playing. But as you can see, the audio, um, the tape starts on the left, and then it goes over to the right, and so the tape itself makes contact with uh, that kind of like Akai console there in the center there. It runs under that and then goes up into the other spindle, the other reel. And so a reel-to-reel player can actually play at a couple different speeds. In fact, I know of like 3 different speeds it can play at. Right now, it is playing at 7.5 inches per second, meaning that it is making contact with 7.5 inches of the tape per second. You can slow it down to 3.75 or half of that, 1.75 inches per second. But the faster you have it play, the better the audio quality and the playback quality will be. Okay, for the next piece I'm going to talk about, right above the receiver, I have my CD player, and this is a 5 disc changer. So that means that I can obviously skip around. I can fit up to 5 different CDs in it. I don't know if I've got it filled all the way up, but we'll just take a look here. And so there's different features. You can select which CD you want to listen to over here. And I'm actually going to be changing this out for a different CD player here at the end of this video because I found one that I think might be a little better for my main setup here. I try to use my very best pieces for my main setup here in the living room. And so whenever I get a new piece that is better, I will change it out. Next up here, I have a Sansui stereo double cassette deck. And so there's some single deck players, there's double deck players. Um, what a double deck would allow you to do is if you had audio. Now, I think technically this was illegal. It probably still is, but if you had audio on one tape that you wanted to copy over to another tape, you would put the tape you wanted to copy into this deck, and then you would hit record on this deck, and then the audio would go from there to there. Though you do have the option also to record from another device onto a cassette tape as well. For example, I made a mixtape where essentially what I did was I would record audio off of some vinyl records, and the receiver, since everything is connected to that central receiver, what it allowed me to do was it would send the audio from the vinyl record in through the receiver and then into the cassette player, and then the cassette tape picked up the audio from the record, and then that's how I made a mixtape. I'll also add this is not the first cassette deck that I've had for this setup. This is actually the third one I've had for this setup. My first one was my dad's Pioneer. It took a crap on me, sadly. I couldn't fix it. I tried. And then I was rocking a Techniques one for several years, and I still have that one. It still works, but it's now in my basement setup, so you'll see that later in this video. Um, but this is the best one I've had so far, and I've heard great things about this brand Sansui here. Hopefully, I'm saying it right, but great stuff. Okay, now for my turntable here. This is an Audio Technica. This is like my end game turntable here. Um, it's very top of the line kind of turntable, like DJs could use this. So I'll go ahead and show you some more features here. So basically the way it works is I turn it on here, and then to make it spin up, I just press that button. And if I had an actual record, then I would take the arm, place that down. What I found to be absolutely essential for me in a good turntable is I wanted to have pitch control, and that is with that knob there. So if I wanted it to be higher pitch, I would push that up. If I wanted it to be lower pitch, I would pull it down. And the reason I wanted that feature is because I bought lesser quality turntables in the past, and I mean, it was probably more of a motor issue, but I would notice it would get pitchy after a couple years of use. So I figured at least if this one ever starts having that issue, I can at least uh, compensate it and hold off replacing it for a while longer. But I could be really stupid for saying that. I bet somebody that knows what they're talking about more than me is probably cringing hearing that, but it is what it is. Okay, and then the last piece up top here is an 8-track player. Unfortunately, I have the worst luck with 8 tracks, and this one currently doesn't work. I have plans to take it apart and try to fix it at some point, and if I can't do that, I'm going to take it into a shop and get it refurbished if possible. So, unfortunately, no 8-track demonstration today, but some of the things I can tell you about it is it's actually kind of one of the easiest players to use. I mean, uh, from what I remember seeing a video on them a couple years ago where this guy described it as like when he was a kid, the record players were for the adults and the 8 tracks were for the kids because the 8 tracks were pretty durable. You could pretty much just jam it in there and it just starts playing. There's like not even a play button. Literally, you just shove it in there and then it starts playing. So that's how an 8-track player works. All right, so before I leave the living room here, I did want to show the last couple of playback devices I have in here. And these are both Victrola phonographs. They were both manufactured in 1915, but as you can see, they're quite a bit different in size here. I'm just going to tilt the phone this way. And so you can see that this one's more of a cabinet, whereas the one on the left is more of just a little console by itself there. And so these are the ones where you do wind them up. And I will actually go ahead and demonstrate a song with these. I've seen other people do it on YouTube, so I'm not worried about the copyright issue there. So that was your demonstration of a Victrola phonograph manufactured 110 years ago. I could spend a whole video just talking about these pieces here, but a couple differences between these records and your regular vinyl records. These old records were actually made out of a different substance called shellac. And another difference is that these records, when they're played, they would actually spin at 78 rotations per minute. And your normal vinyl records spin at 33 and a third RPMs. Although some will sometimes play at 45. And of course, 45 plus 33 is 78. So that can't be a coincidence. Alright, we're down in my dirty and noisy basement here where I can show you my second setup here. And this is where I keep some of my older equipment that is not quite as good as the equipment in my main setup. But I don't have all of the same components for this one. But I do have an old CRT TV there. I've got PlayStation 2. I've got a VCR. I've got a turntable on top there. I've got that Technics cassette deck that I mentioned earlier. I have yet another Pioneer receiver there. And then this is an old Sony CD player that I kept. It did have its own speakers that it came with originally, but I've since disconnected those because I have better speakers here. Now these speakers honestly should probably be my main speakers, but I just don't have the room for them in my living room. They're a little dirty and dusty right now. Like you can see, that one's very much in need of cleaning there, but Marantz speakers are, at least far as vintage goes, those are top of the line. Okay, so here's just another quick like face-on view of the different components. So again, the central hub is your receiver. I have that down at the bottom. Basically, this one's a little simpler to explain, so I'm just going to go ahead and explain how it works. You just turn it on, and then at the bottom here, you'll see there's different options. There's video, aux, tape, tuner, phono, and CD. So what do all those mean? Video and aux would be, connecting it to your TV. Tape would be connecting it to your tape deck. Tuner is if you just want to play radio, like AM, FM. Phono would be for your record player, your turntable, and then obviously CD is self-explanatory. So if you're wondering why did I switch this tape deck out for that Sansui that I got, it's because this one isn't that responsive. I mean, everything works on this Technics player, but usually I have to press play like 3 times for it to actually play. And in order for it to rewind, I have to like hold down the rewind button. So like everything still works on it, but it's just a pain in the butt. It's just not very responsive. Maybe it's on its last legs, I don't know, but keep using it for as long as it works. As for this turntable, this is a Pioneer PL100. I got it used for $75 at a record store, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's a very solid record player for the price that I paid, so it's good as a secondary turntable. It's not my end game like the one I have in my living room, but it's pretty solid. Okay, so here's my final setup that I have in my house right now, and this is my bedroom. So mind the clean clothes there laying next to the speakers. The Fisher speakers there on that you see on left and right, those were actually my original speakers for my living room setup. And then when I got new speakers a few years ago for my birthday, I replaced those. But this setup doesn't really have much going for it at the moment. It does have 2 main hookups. It has radio capability. It has aux capability to hook up with my phone. And that aux can also be hooked up to any portable device I have. I do have a portable cassette deck, kind of like a Walkman, so if I wanted to listen to tapes up here, I could just plug it into that, and it would sound pretty decent. But this CD player that you see on top, this Technics CD player, I'm actually going to change out for that TEAC CD player that I have in my living room, because after messing with the different features, I believe that this Technics CD player is actually better. So there seems to be more features, and it seems to actually play the CD faster. I don't have to wait like 15-20 seconds for it to actually start playing. It pretty much starts playing as soon as I hit play, which is nice. And it has a remote that comes with it. So I know that TEAC one does originally come with a remote, but I didn't have the remote when I bought it at a thrift store. So just for those features alone, I think I'm going to have to switch it out and it's going to become my main CD player. And so that's how I'm going to conclude today's video, where you're going to actually get to see the step-by-step process for how I've got it all hooked up. All right, so let's start the de-installation process here. So first what I'm going to do is just take everything off the top here. Get everything out of the way. This alarm clock out of the way. So what I'm going to really show you here is what's going on in the back. Gotta be careful, don't want to drop anything. Okay, so this is kind of where the magic is. So you'll see that I have a RCA cable here that is hooked up to a corresponding spot here on this receiver. And there's a red and a white. The red is for the right speaker, the white is for left. And so the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to unplug this CD player from the receiver. I'm just going to leave that plugged in here because I'm going to connect that to a different receiver later on anyway. But as you can see, there's different hookups on the receiver. Over here is actually where you've got different speakers plugged in. So I'm just going to show you real quick how that looks. Do this one. So these are hooked up with copper wire. And so that's what you got to use, copper wire, to hook up the old school speakers. I'll plug that back in now. There's basically a little lever that you have to pull up, and then you shove the wire in there, and then you let it come back down, and then voila. Okay, so now I'm just going to unplug the CD player. We're good to go. All right, so I have the Technics CD player ready to go here, but first I'm going to have to kind of uninstall the TEAC there. So we'll get that process rolling here. So you can see this is going to be quite a bit more complicated. I'm going to actually have to take the cassette deck out first because it's sitting on top of the CD player, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I've got the cassette deck off of there. It's kind of a pain in the butt to get out of there. It was tangled up with other stuff. So pretty much what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to find the plug-in for the CD player there and take that out of the receiver there at the bottom, and then I'll take the CD player. I'm going to unplug it from the outlet, of course, as well, and then I can yank that sucker out of there. Now what I've noticed is the cable that I had was pretty long, so I'm going to actually use a shorter cord now because this is only a few inches. It's kind of overkill, and that's less tangle and wires I have to deal with later on. Okay, now I've got the CD player off as well. So now I'm going to take the new one, the Technics one, and I'm going to install that one. And I'll just go ahead and show that whole process here. love when they're the same depth. Okay, so I'll have to hook it up two ways. I'll have to plug it in, of course, and then I'm going to take the RCA cable here. That's going to go into the CD plug-in over here on the receiver. Okay, those are plugged in now. So what I'm going to have to do now is I got to reinstall my cassette deck. I did want to go ahead and show something really quick here on this cassette deck before I install it, and that is the fact that it has two different RCA plugins. So line in and line out, record or play. So if you just want to play music off of your cassette deck, then all you need is one RCA cable here with a red and a white hookup there. But if you want to record, you also have to have an additional one here. So that's what those mean here. Okay, everything is now hooked up, so the last step is just to play some stuff on both players and make sure everything was hooked up properly. All right, well, I'm happy to report that everything is working just fine after hooking it all back up, and I tested multiple CDs and tapes on both devices that I had unplugged, and everything's working hunky-dory still. So if there's a specific piece today that you want to know more about, or if you want to learn more about how to hook up, a hi-fi setup like I've got going on, just let me know. And it's been fun with this inaugural episode, visual episode of Bill's Chill Fill. But yeah, thanks for watching Bill's Chill Fill.